Hello and welcome to the C3 Method podcast. Today we're going to be talking about Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, Retatrutide, and how we can use those in weight loss and peak body composition. I wanted to use the term in bodybuilding, like how we use these drugs in bodybuilding, but I don't like the term bodybuilding. I like the term aesthetic sports because typical quote-unquote bodybuilding shows include much more than bodybuilding now. There's fit model, bikini, wellness, women's figure, women's physique. Might even be one that I missed there. Then for men, there's men's physique, classic physique, and bodybuilding. It's just so much more encompassing than bodybuilding. But the SEO, search engine optimization, doesn't like the term aesthetic sports because I kind of think I made that up or it's too general of a term. I'm already rambling. Well, thank you so much for listening already. But that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how competitors will use these drugs, which of these drugs is best for what their needs are. And then for those who aren't competitors, if they're wanting to lose body fat and or peak body composition, like to obtain peak body composition, which of these drugs is best for them. Now, when we think about them, Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, and Retatrutide, and I use Retatrutide and Retatrutide interchangeably. It depends on which client I'm talking to and the way they're saying it. I believe the proper pronunciation, there you go, is Retatrutide. So I'm going to try to say that most often. But if I say Retatrutide, I'm saying the same thing. So Retatrutide, there you go. So Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, and Retatrutide, they're leveling up, essentially, of the drugs. The first was Semaglutide, and we would probably know that mostly by Ozempic. It's a GLP, so glucagon-like peptide. It's something that we produce naturally. When we eat, it kind of tells our body it's full, but it's a very short lifespan, only a few minutes. And when we take the drug, we can extend the lifespan of that peptide, giving our body this sensation of feeling fuller for longer. So in a sense, we're using it as an appetite suppressant. Now, when people were using that and started to use it to higher and higher dosages, they would start to get nauseous. So then they created Tirzepatide, which is the GLP-1, which is the glucagon-like peptide, but it added in what's called GIP, which is a glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide. Really long terms, we're just kind of calling that GIP. And what that does is it helps our body secrete insulin. It helps with insulin sensitivity, and it helped to reduce the nausea that people were experiencing with a basic GLP-1. So just the Semaglutide, they were getting nauseous when the doses started going up. So they added the GIP concept that reduced the nausea. That also helped with insulin sensitivity, so it helps with people with diabetic issues, helps reduce A1C. A lot of good benefits there. So it has become more of the norm of what is recommended rather than just Semaglutide now. For most wellness clinics and places you go to, they're going to recommend Tirzepatide. Now, that has been advanced even more by adding in glucagon. So you have the GLP-1, then we added the GIP, then we're now adding glucagon, and that is Retatrutide. Retatrutide, I believe it has yet to be approved by FDA, so you can get it at wellness clinics and whatnot. But the benefit with the glucagon is it helps reduce fat, like visceral fat around the organs, specifically like liver fat, because it makes the process of storing carbohydrates into our muscle cells, it makes that inefficient, which burns off a lot of body fat for energy for that process. So that was the benefit for that, is you have the GLP-1, which is the appetite suppressant. And it does other things like reducing inflammation, but the main thing we're going to use it for is appetite suppressant. But people were feeling nauseous, so they added in the GIP. And then when they found out, well, I could just add glucagon to this and I get the benefits of the GLP, I get the benefits of the GIP, but now I also get specifically visceral fat. So kind of like fat around our organs, fat in our midsection, you get more of that being burned off in a sense. So that is the layers of development and advancement as we look through those different peptides. So when we think about which one is best for us, it depends on which effect you really want. If you're looking for only appetite suppressant and you only need a really moderate amount, you're not having too much trouble, you don't feel struggles with appetite suppressant in maintenance diets or even a small deficit, it's only when you really push a major deficit that you start to feel kind of the hunger cravings. You might then get away with only a semaglutide, and that's enough of an appetite suppressant, but you also don't need a major dose of it, and it would be the cheapest. So that would be a case where semaglutide is good if you only have really moderate hunger issues at all in major deficits. Then, if you're somebody who struggles, or maybe you have a history of overeating, you're struggling with maintenance calories, or you're okay at maintenance calories, but the second you go into any kind of deficit, you really start to struggle there, then you might benefit from Tirzepatide, where you're going to get a little bit of that nausea blunting effect. So that way, if you're pushing the appetite suppressant component, the GLP-1 component, if you're pushing that into higher doses to really manage those hunger cravings, you're not going to get the nausea that's associated with just a semaglutide. So that can be helpful there. And then also, if you want the benefits, or if you need the benefits of the insulin control, the insulin sensitivity, the reduction of the A1C, if you have any of those issues. However, if we're looking at, in this context of just fat loss for peak body composition, it's not that we're not worried about those things, but if they aren't major red flags, you would really only be using the Tirzepatide if you needed larger doses of the semaglutide, but we're running into the nausea impact. Now, it's not going to hurt you to have some insulin sensitivity, especially if you're using other compounds, which can mess with insulin sensitivity as well. So that's kind of a way of choosing between those two, but Tirzepatide is typically more expensive than semaglutide, so that's something to factor in. Then Retatrutide is definitely going to be the most expensive. It's going to be the most impactful in regards to having all three of the benefits, the GLP, the GIP, and the glucagon. So you're going to get the appetite suppressant, you're going to get the anti-nausea and the insulin sensitivity control, but then you're also going to get the visceral fat loss. You're going to get more, essentially, like fat loss located to the midsection area. So that is going to be something you would consider. It's the most expensive, so it depends on if you want those secondary benefits as much as the appetite suppressant, whether you think that extra money is worth that component. Now, the appetite suppressant impact actually lessens as you go above semaglutide. So semaglutide is literally just appetite suppressant. It's just the GLP-1. So per dose, you're going to get kind of the most impact out of that. When you add in the GIP per dose, if you seem like maybe you're taking, well, just whatever the amount is you're taking, let's leave it at that. I don't want to suggest amounts. If you're taking a certain amount of semaglutide, but now you're taking that exact same amount of Tirzepatide, you're going to have a little less appetite suppressant because you've now made space within that volume for the GIP. So you might notice if you move from semaglutide to Tirzepatide to Retatrutide that you're getting lessening appetite suppressant. Therefore, somebody might need to increase the dosage as they would level up in those if they still want that same appetite suppressant component. And that then also factors into the cost impact is if my Retatrutide, for the sake of making things easy in the conversation, is if now the GLP-1, the appetite suppressant is only 1/3 of the things that are in there, because now it's GLP-1, GIP, and the glucagon, I'm only going to get, I'm getting basically a lessened impact for appetite suppressant, so I might need to take more of that drug, but since it is more expensive, now all of a sudden it's even more expensive because not only is it more expensive per volume, if I have to take more volume to get the appetite suppressant, that increases the cost. So the idea of me wanting to make this video was this directly answers one of my current clients' questions who's competing for bodybuilding, and then we're also discussing using one of these peptides in their off season because they have pretty intense hunger control issues. They started into bodybuilding in part because they wanted to overcome emotional eating and stress-based eating, and they also had a harsh childhood related around food. They had family troubles and food was an escape for them, and that led to unhealthy adult behaviors. So we're working on using bodybuilding and controlling nutrition as a way to overcome those past demons, reclaim their body, love their body, but then also how are we going to manage this when we don't have the pressure of a bodybuilding show, creating that motivation as well. So we went from essentially kind of like an eating disorder to where instead of it being eat food to feel better, it's like, okay, well now I'm going to use a bodybuilding show to control my food intake, but then we have to manipulate, well, what happens when there's not a bodybuilding show being the motivation? Can we still have this hunger control without a motivator such as that in place? So we're really progressing through the psychological aspects, and the peptides are helping along that journey in how we navigate those emotional feelings and our connections with food, and the way in which our body's just responding to food depending on the caloric intake that we're having. Whether we're increasing caloric intake, we're at maintenance, or we're at a deficit, and especially if you're coming out of a deficit, sometimes people can have really bad rebounds in hunger control. So using either like Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, Retatrutide, any of these things, you can use that almost in a recovery phase from a caloric deficit, like a major deficit diet, to help mitigate that strong rebound and those super huge cravings that people will have. Sometimes people will do diets, 12 weeks is a really short contest prep diet. They might do 16, 20, 24-week diets, and then without having proper control after the show, within 4 to 8 weeks, they can undo everything they did during that whole prep. So using one of these peptides to control that after the show time frame can really help us hold on to more of the positive progress that we made during the show prep. Now, whether we're using any of these ones, Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, Retatrutide, we want to think of some basic tips and things that can kind of help us use those the best. One tip that I have is to split the dosage. Commonly, you'll be recommended to take it once a week. That's mostly the recommendation just so people are consistent. If you look at the way in which these drugs work, when you take the shot, they can kick in. For most people, they say they feel the effects within, say, 12 to 24 hours is when that starts to feel the positive impact of the drug. But then within some people, within 3 to 5 days, they start to say, oh man, I'm not feeling it as much. I'm starting to have more of those hunger cravings. And that's before a 7-day marker, before that full week is up. So sometimes people will take their shot on Monday and then they lose their mind and overeat on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then they take their shot again on Monday. And that cycle repeats where they're super disciplined the 2 to 3 days after the shot, but then they lose their mind 2 to 3 days after that. So splitting the dosage into twice a week can help a lot to help get rid of the major peaks and valleys of hunger. We can help to kind of make it more of a controlled peak and valley, a controlled up and down throughout the week. So that's one tip, is to split the dose into twice a week. That can help a lot. It also really helps over time reduce the total amount that you need. Oftentimes people judge their amount based on how much do I need for this to last 7 days. It's like, well, if you only take it, every 3 days, you might not need as much at all because now you only need to last 3 days. So that's another component, and that also helps reduce nausea. If somebody's only taking Semaglutide and they find themselves being super nauseous because they're trying to take enough to last 7 days, just split that into 2 doses, and all of a sudden they don't need as much, and that can get rid of some of the nausea. So there's a lot of benefits if we split the dosage up into 2 days. Another thing we want to focus on is high protein, high hydration. High protein helps us maintain more of our muscle since we're going to be in a calorie deficit, and hydration helps us digest our food, of what food we do eat. It helps it move through our intestines so we don't get backed up. So that's really helpful for consistency in bowel movements. And then also muscle hydration. If you're consuming overall less calories, you're going to be in a calorie deficit. You're going to have less water being held within the muscles in glycogen. So increasing your hydration throughout the day can help the muscles stay more hydrated. So not only does it help digestion, it helps with muscle mobility, muscle stiffness, muscle soreness, overall mobility. And then that also helps with muscle recovery as well. If you're still lifting weights, which you definitely should be lifting weights, it helps promote muscle retention. So that helps overall, ton of benefits with that. So those are like the two main tips that we would have. And a couple other tips, I'm looking down at my notes, is to make sure that one of the tips, like I said, was to use the least amount possible. We do want to remain sensitive to hunger. You don't want to completely shut off hunger. This is beneficial for a ton of reasons. One of the main reasons why I prefer this with the clients I work with is that they still stay sensitive to hunger, is so that way we don't just completely shut down food intake and run into a lot of like muscle loss. We also don't run into more dehydration issues, more bowel movement issues, more digestive issues. If we stay sensitive, that tends to eliminate most, if not all, of those issues for us, because we're still going to be intaking enough food, fluid, and whatnot that we're still feeling the effects of our body, and therefore knowing, oh man, maybe I need to bump my protein up on these couple of days, get my recovery back up because my muscles are feeling stiff or sore. My digestion is kind of going to poorly, so maybe I need to increase my fluid a little bit more. It keeps us more sensitive to those components, therefore we better manage those components in a healthy range. And then by staying more sensitive to our food, our hunger, staying sensitive to our hunger, it allows us to learn how to still manage hunger. If you completely shut off hunger, you never learn how to manage it. It's kind of like if somebody gives you homework, a teacher gives you homework and they give you 1,000 problems to solve in one night. It's not going to happen, right? It's overwhelming, it's too much. But if they give you no homework, you don't learn anything. But if they give you 10 problems to solve, you're like, okay, that's going to take a little bit of effort, but I can do that. Same thing with hunger. If we have overwhelming, crazy amounts of hunger because we're in extreme calorie deficit, we're going to freak out. We might do really well for a day or two, a week, a month, and then you lose your mind, you overeat, and then you're always starting and stopping diets. You feel like everything's broken. I'm never going to make progress, all those things. So when the hunger gets to be too extreme that we can't manage it, that's too much. We got to bring that down. But if we get rid of all hunger whatsoever, we never learn how to manage what to do when we feel hungry. So we still want to stay sensitive to hunger and say, oh, okay, I can feel that I'm a little bit hungry now. What did I just eat? If I ate something that digested very quickly, maybe the next time I can take away some simple carbohydrates, add in more fruits and vegetables to get more volume, get more fiber. Maybe I underate my protein because I wasn't really paying attention to it because I wasn't hungry at all. Now if I'm a little sensitive, I can say, oh man, I'm gonna make sure I get enough protein in this meal so that way it feels voluminous and I can feel a little fuller for longer after that meal. So it still allows us to learn how to manipulate meals based on food selection, digestion rates. Also, if I'm a little hungry, am I hungry because my body needs the food or am I hungry because I'm bored? Maybe I just need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to call a friend. Maybe I need to do a hobby that keeps my hands busy, or my mind busy. So staying sensitive to hunger is still really important in the sense that we learn how to properly manage hunger. And then the last tip that I have is to make sure that we taper off. I think of using these like Semaglutide, Tirzepatide, Retatrutide, using them in a bell curve in the sense to where you want to start at what you believe is useful but a low dose. If you have to increase it all to get the impact and the effect that you want, you go ahead and do so. But then you don't just quit cold turkey. You have to taper back down. And that really helps a lot. A lot of the people I've worked with who have worked with general practitioners and people who maybe they prescribe this stuff but they don't work with people hands-on and one-on-one basis. They just kind of prescribe it and then they never see you again. Those people tend to, like ramp up, and then like, oh, you hit your goal, okay, done. It's like, no, that's going to cause a huge rebound, and that can really mess up a lot of people. Is they've had this drug, especially usually those people tend to prescribe too much because they're only doing the one shot a week. They give you a crap ton that almost shuts off your hunger completely. If not having the nausea, then they move you to Tirzepatide, then they increase the dose. And then eventually you're never hungry, and then they quit the drug, and then all of a sudden you're hungry way too much. So it's too extreme. to lessen that like post meeting the goal extreme cutoff rebound, we want to taper back down. So think of a bell curve. As I ramp up to get the effect that I want, once I'm kind of close to my goal or I met my goal, I want to start to ramp down. And during that process, if the whole time we've stayed sensitive to hunger, we have learned the skills of how to manage hunger. If you haven't done that, by tapering off at the end, it gives you a chance to do that. So if you went, all out at first, just tried to strip off all the fat, shut off the hunger, you just wanted to meet your goal, you didn't listen to any of my advice. How you fix that at the end is then tapering back down, and that gives you a chance to kind of learn how to be hungry, and it also can help lessen how strong that hunger sense is. So when you basically are using these drugs, you're pushing your body into an extreme deficit. Your body's just you're masking the impact of that deficit in the sense of what you're going to feel. So once you stop taking the drug, there's not the appetite suppressant. So your body's going to say, oh, holy crap, I'm only eating X percentage of calories that I'm used to. This is way not what I'm used to. Please go eat a bunch more. And we freak out. So if we taper down the drugs, we can mitigate some of that body's initial response. So then as the drug comes out, the amount that we're in that deficit is less and less and less and less and less. And then it's just a moderate amount. If not, basically we taper it back down to maintenance calories, and then we're fine. So that really helps eliminate that rebound, that really strong, miserable, basically, feeling of that rebound if you were to try to quit the drugs cold turkey once you meet your goal. So those are tips on how to manage these and get the best experience while you're going through them. And that way we can use these drugs successfully, not only for the goal of fat loss and body composition, but also feel decent along the way and be able to sustain those results for longer, if not, lifelong. So hopefully this podcast was helpful to understand what's the difference between semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, and then the different components that are in it, the GLP-1, GIP, glucagon, and then which of these ones are going to be necessary for us depending on our goals and our price range and whatnot. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us on our website. It's www.c3method.com. The 3 is spelled out THREE, so CTHREE method.com. Awesome. And then whatever platform you're listening to or watching this on, you can always list questions there as well. I'm sure I'll get some kind of notification. I'll be aware of it, and then I'll be able to help you out. So thank you for investing your time into us. I hope you get everything you need from this podcast. If you want anything else, just follow up in some way. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.